I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. All right. Well, today I'd like to welcome to the podcast Steve Gordon. Steve is the CEO of the Unstoppable Agency. He's a two-time entrepreneur and best-selling author of Unstoppable Referrals, 10 times referrals, half the effort, and the exponential network strategy. He is the host of the Unstoppable CEO podcast and has published over 400 articles on marketing and sales for professional service firms. So many things for us to talk about. And his firm, The Unstoppable Agency, helps consultants and digital agencies land great clients by hosting their own podcast and using his proprietary podcast prospecting method. Welcome.
Great to be here, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your first job?
My very first job? Well, it depends. Do you count being like lawn boy and pool boy for my dad? That was
Absolutely.
I got paid for that. I didn't get paid well, but I got paid.
There you go.
My kids don't seem to really value either work or the fact that, hey, you're going to get some below minimum wage amount to live here and be happy that we're paying you to do something we should make you do for free. But that's a whole other story. So that was probably my first job. My first job outside the house was working at this kind of local knockoff version of Foot Locker in Jacksonville, Florida, where I grew up.
Oh, that's funny. Were you helping people size shoes and stuff?
Oh yeah, I can do the whole thing. Stand up. Let me feel where your toe is.
Do you think that translates to what you do now?
No,
not at all. You're not
No.
testing where people's toes are and their marketing plans?
No, and I was at the time not that great at sales. But it was actually kind of fun. It was right when I'm old enough to have been around when the first Air Jordans came out. And so we sold lots of those. They were, it was like $100 pair of shoes in the 80s, which was a big deal.
Yeah, I remember that. I was little, but I remember that.
You were like 3, probably.
I don't know. What year did the Air Jordans come out?
I don't know. It must have been 80, probably 88, 89. I could have that wrong, but that would have been about that time.
Okay, well, I was 8 or 9 then.
Yeah.
Not 3. So tell us about your journey to starting your current job, your current venture.
Yeah, so I have a technical degree in a tiny little discipline of engineering called geomatics, which probably nobody's ever heard of.
I have.
But have you? Yeah. So yeah, if you've ever used Google Maps, then you can thank somebody who has my background. And I went to work for a small engineering consulting firm out of college. I was the 10th employee, and just had a fantastic opportunity there. Kind of got taken under the wing of the founder, and he mentored me. And I'd been there about 4 years, and he asked me to take over as CEO for him and kind of start his exit.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how I got into, entrepreneurship and running businesses. And was with that firm for another decade or so, and then just really fell in love with the sales and marketing aspects of it more than the technical stuff. And so, left and started our current firm, and we help other professionals get clients. We work with people who really are expert at what they do, but maybe they didn't get into what they're doing now with the thought that, hey, I'm going to have to be a marketer and a salesperson.
Is that every small business owner?
It's a lot of them. It's particularly, so, you're an accountant,
Yeah.
You didn't go to accounting school to come out and then have to sell clients, most likely, right?
Nope. Wasn't even on the radar.
Yeah. You would have gone into the sales program in your business school. Right. So, and that's true for an awful lot of people who get into service businesses, and then they realize, wait, I gotta do the sales thing because I got to eat and pay the mortgage. And so that's who we help. And, and we kind of come in and take over their marketing for them so that they can focus on what they do well.
That's awesome. Yeah. My friend Stephen Crawford likes to say, I eat what I kill. In sales, you eat what you kill. And it's very true for business owners too,
Absolutely.
especially small business owners. Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening to start your own business and then be like, oh, I have to sell stuff. I think almost all of us do that, have that conversation with a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, you have to sell stuff.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, for as long as we've been doing this as a society,
Mm-hmm.
still, new professionals come out and they struggle,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't know where to start. They don't know which answers to believe. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually think the whole process is really pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
There are really just a few things that you've got to do, and then you've got to make some decisions about exactly how you're going to go about doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to take away my card at the marketers meeting next time for admitting this publicly, but I'll give you the inside scoop.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Every marketing tactic works. They all do.
Mm-hmm. They just have to be applied.
Have you seen those yellow signs that people use, out on the corners when they want to sell like a beat up house?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You could print those up for your accounting firm and put them out on corners, and you probably get some clients.
It all works.
It all works.
Doesn't all work well.
Well, some of it, I could even argue that.
Depends on what you want, right?
In the right context, yeah. In the right context, it can all work well. And the difference most of the time between it working well for a particular business and it not working at all is the degree to which that business owner has committed to a particular strategy and that they've mastered it. And the number one thing that I think holds business owners back I've been working with them, with all of our clients now for a decade. And the thing that we see over and over that totally trips people up is that they're impatient. And so they'll try a particular marketing strategy. They won't get anywhere close to mastering it. They'll try it 1 or 2 or 3 times. They'll go, oh, that didn't work right away. Let me try the next one. And then the next one doesn't work right away. And the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
So my next question for you was the biggest barriers and pitfalls for small business owners. And it's consistency,
I'm ahead of the game.
Right? It's consistency and then patience. Because a lot of these, almost everything's a long game, right? So podcasting is a long game. If you're networking locally, it's a long game. If you're networking nationally, it's a long game because you have to create relationships.
Well, I think it really comes down to, are you selling something that's expensive and that requires a lot of trust on the part of your client? And if you answer yes to those 2 questions, then whether you like it or not, the rules of the game are that it's a long game. And it's not a long game for every prospect, but you don't know.
Right.
And so there's a guy that I think is just an absolutely brilliant marketer, and his name's Dean Jackson, and he boils it down into really there are only 2 times that prospects buy, now and later. And like you hear that, and you go, it's like the most obvious thing.
Thanks, Dean.
Yeah, but there's some brilliance in there because some of them are going to buy now, and we pretty much all know what to do with the ones that are going to buy now. But most of the value that you're going to get out of any group of leads is, is from the ones who are going to buy later. And so if you begin to think about how do I build my, my marketing process, my business development process, so that it takes care of the people who are going to buy later, you really have solved the whole game.
That's really interesting. Oop. Oh, there you are. I lost you for a second. So what have you found that works best for consistent growth? So what does that look like for those leaders?
Well, so for for the people who aren't going to buy now, it's simply just staying in touch and being interesting. And that's a challenge. If you talk to a business owner and they go, Yeah, I've got, I was at a conference, 6 months ago, and I still have all of the contacts that I made. I have their business cards in the bottom of my briefcase that sits over in the corner because that's the briefcase I take to conferences. It's not my regular one.
Mm-hmm.
Or they can open up the drawer and say, there's last year's leads, and it's a stack of business cards in the drawer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm giving you those examples because I was that guy at one point.
Here's my pile from last week's conference.
Yeah.
It's right here on my desk. I haven't done anything with it yet.
So it's, everybody has really great intentions, and it's easier to be in the moment and to generate those opportunities. It is really hard to figure out, how do I stay in front of them for the long haul? So I like to simplify all that and have one move. If you've got kind of one default move that keeps you in touch, and then that's all that you do, and it keeps you in front of them at least once a month, but ideally every other week or weekly, then you're going to be showing up in that future client's life pretty close to when they make the decision to work with someone like you. And I think that's the missing link for most people. They don't have that one default move or where people are going to go. So like, somebody comes into our world, whether it's because I went to a conference or I gave a speech or they requested, or bought one of my books, the one default move is we have a podcast, like you have a podcast. And every week, guess what? We do a new episode and we email it out to everybody that is in our database. And so every week we're staying in front of them. And the reason we went to a podcast was because I got tired of punishing myself, because I wrote for probably 4 years, I wrote a daily email to our list. Every weekday I would wake up, I would write an email, first thing I did every day. I got it down to where it would only take about 30 minutes. But it's hard to come up. I wrote over 1,000 emails. After a while, you start repeating yourself, right?
Same stories over and over.
Yeah,
and they're
that's
like,
a lot of work.
Thanks, Grandpa.
But when we have a podcast like this, like I'm coming on your podcast here, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of background work that happens when we're done.
Yeah.
But you don't have to come up with the content.
Nope.
That's what you have me for.
Exactly.
And you're going to be on my podcast. And when you're there, I'm not going to have to come up with the content. You're going to come up with the content. I'm going to send that out to everyone in my database. They are going to think that I'm just a really great resource because I'm connected to all of these amazing people. And I've interviewed about 180 people so far on our podcast over the last 3 years. And so every week over the last 3 years, I show up with somebody new and interesting to introduce to everyone else that I know. So it's like we've got this big party going on.
Right.
Podcast.
It's fun too.
It is. It's a lot of fun and it's easy. So all I have to do, and I would imagine, I don't know what your process is like, behind the scenes, but all I have to do on our podcast is at the time you and I are going to meet, I just show up. We have a Zoom call just like this. I record that. Then as soon as it's downloaded afterwards, it immediately goes off to my team. I don't do anything else.
Yeah.
All of the follow-up is handled. So that's my default move.
I love that. So what are some, so why podcasting? You kind of talked about why podcasting, because it gets people in front of people and it creates a wealth of content, right? That you can put anywhere at this point, right? We can upload it to Instagram, we can put it on LinkedIn, we can put it anywhere we want to. So it's a content generator. I would say that, like, people ask me all the time, how many kind of clients have you gotten and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's really not about like the client number, which I really couldn't tell you. It's about the content.
Well, ultimately it should be about the client number.
Yeah.
I think you have to think about how you use the podcast to do that and where it really fits in.
Yeah. So, we're going to talk about that.
First of all, why podcasting? Very simple. I told you a few minutes ago, I wrote those 1,000 emails. That was a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
And in the process, I became a pretty good writer, but I didn't start out as one.
I'm a horrible writer.
As kind of a reluctant writer. But I thought, well, this is the thing I need to do, right? Most business owners are not stupid enough to make the decision
to do daily,
to do that, or to do weekly, or to do monthly. Now, there are a lot of business owners who have the intention to do a weekly or a biweekly or a monthly, and they'll get, the first one out and the second one will be a struggle, and then maybe they'll get that out, and then they'll skip about 4 months, and then they'll get back on the wagon again. And
you just described our monthly newsletters to the T.
yeah, that's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
Everybody goes through that. So with a podcast, when you remove the writing, it becomes so much easier. There's no blank screen to stare at.
Yeah.
It's an appointment that you have in the calendar with another person, ideally someone that you want to connect with. And so when we're working with a client on this, we're building out a list of either potential clients that they want to work with to connect them with, or with centers of influence, people that could refer them to the kind of clients that they want to work with. And it's just a great way to connect with those groups of people, to build a relationship with them.
Great value.
Call it this. Yeah, great. You're giving them a great value, because business owners will love to come on a podcast and join you. And you get this great strategic byproduct out of it is now you've got content to send out in your weekly newsletter that nurtures all of your other prospects. A lot of people wonder, well, if it's not all about my business and what I do, how will it benefit me? And first, the important thing you need to understand is it positions you as an authority.
Right.
So if you're inviting people on, let's say you've got a local business, you're inviting all the big deals within the community in to be interviewed on the podcast. First of all, they're going to want to do it because they want the PR. And then second, you're now going to elevate to sort of their level of authority or celebrity within the community because you're associating with them.
Yeah.
So that's the first big benefit. But then the other big benefit is that, you're able to then sprinkle in, whether it's a little segment in each episode or some episodes maybe once a month where it's just you, where you're talking about some problem that your prospects tend to face and you're educating them on that. And if you showed up every week and talked about that kind of stuff, you would probably, unless it's a problem people are really interested in, you're probably going to bore them to death.
Especially with the, my knowledge base.
Yeah. I mean, if we had like the weekly tax podcast.
Yeah, that'd be really boring.
Right. You might not even want to listen to it.
I don't.
Yeah. So, but by interviewing business owners, you've got something that other business owners will want to listen to.
Yeah. And
part of the deal, I said, at the beginning, there are really only a few things that you have to do to win. You have to open new relationships with people that you want to do business with and get their attention. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to hold their attention over time so that when they are ready to buy later, that you're right there. You're top of mind to them. They understand what you do. You're the closest, I used to tell everybody in my first business that we always wanted to be the at-hand consultant. We wanted to be right at hand. We wanted to be the easiest option anytime a client needed something. And, by showing up frequently like that, you get to be that at-hand provider. And it's just a powerful position to be in. The other great thing that it does is it allows your prospects to spend a lot of time with you.
Right.
Have you ever?
We don't even know it.
Have you ever had a future client like on a sales call?
Not yet.
They listen to the podcast?
Well, I've had a few sales calls where people are like, oh, hey, I saw, because I'm doing a lot of LinkedIn outreach right now. People being like, oh, hey, I caught a couple podcasts and I'm always just like, what do you think? What did you think? Give me some positive feedback. And they're just like, this is great, but they hop on already knowing me, which is actually really funny because I talked to somebody yesterday and she said something that I was just like, oh my God, we're going to be best friends. She's like, yeah, I thought we would be based on your podcast. And I was like, you already know me.
Yes.
Somehow.
That's really powerful.
It is really powerful. So we already had a connection because she already felt like she knew me. And she pegged me too, which was hilarious. And I was like, how did you know?
Well, to me, that's the great value in it. So you can write stuff, but writing and getting a lot of emotion and personality into the writing and getting that to come through is really difficult.
It's really difficult. Every time a master writes something, first of all, I'm a horrible writer. And I'm always like, you can just do whatever you need to do this. I'm just giving you the rough draft. Or do you have an editor on the back end? Like I always ask when somebody asks me to write something, I'm like, do you have an editor on the back end? Somebody's going to fix this, right? But it's hard because I try to write the way I would speak, but that doesn't always translate.
Yeah, it's
maybe I have too much personality to write. I don't know.
It's actually really hard to get too much into your writing. It's very difficult to do, but we can have this kind of conversation and somebody can listen to it and they know your personality. They have a good sense of my personality. After they've listened to several of your episodes, they do feel like they know you. And they truly do. So you can create relationship with someone without ever having met them. And what a great way to accelerate your sales process.
Yeah. Really fun. It's mostly fun.
It's very, very fun. Yeah. I get texts from clients after they do, I'll have somebody do their first interview on their new podcast and I'll get a text like, oh my gosh, that was the most amazing thing ever. I built this group, this guy loved me in the interview. It was awesome.
Yeah. And I always tell our guests too, especially like our most nervous ones, not you because you've done this 1,000 times, but I always say nobody has walked out of here without telling me they've had fun. Everybody's like, that was fun. Thanks. That was fun because people like to talk about themselves and people like to make connections and it's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's to me, it's the easiest way to do business development, particularly if you're in a business where it's really relationship driven and you need those strategic relationships. It's very, very effective at that.
Awesome. I love it. So kind of tell me, I just kind of want to know, you said, well, all marketing works, but how does traditional marketing fail? So how does like joining networking groups locally or, going out and doing national marketing or whatever and going to all these things, how does it fail usually for people, especially small business owners?
Well, so first, most people don't have any real clarity around who their ideal client is. Or if they do, they're not honest with themselves about it. And they have not made a decision about, well, this is my ideal client. This is who, from a marketing and business development standpoint, this is who we're going to proactively seek. Most people get all tied up in knots about this whole ideal client, niche down, specific target market kind of idea.
I did for years.
Well, because you think that somehow if you make that decision, that if someone comes at you waving a check with your name on it, that you have to send them away and rip it up.
Yeah, that wasn't it for me. What it was for me was picking a good match for what we wanted to do for our clients and also a good psychographic match. So they had to be a good personality match. And that was what was the hardest piece for me. Because I can pick a ton of people or a ton of industries where we can do advanced tax planning. But the question is I'm going to want to work with those people.
Getting specific is the pathway to progress. I have never seen a business accelerate faster from any one decision than the decision to focus on a particular type of ideal client.
Yeah. And that's been
and the reason for that. Go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say the reason is really simple because, when you're trying to market to whoever you come across, and this is the typical thing, like you're doing business development at a local networking event, right? And it's the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker in the room. And so you try and have a message that's generic enough that it means something to the butcher and to the baker and to the candlestick maker, right? Whereas if you knew going into that you only wanted to work with the candlestick maker, you would go in with a message that only meant something to the candlestick maker and you'd ignore everybody else. And you know what? You'd walk out of there with candlestick maker as a client. But you walk in with a message that you've dumbed down to the least common denominator to try and please everybody, and it connects with nobody.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when we got real clear on our niche, and a lot of people be like, that's real specific. And I was like, I don't do anything halfway. Like, we are very specific about who we're going after right now, and who's the perfect fit for our relationship and our services.
Well, and the great thing about that is that, and do you talk on the show about what your niche is?
Yeah. We can talk about it.
So veterinarians, right?
Women-owned veterinarian clinics.
Right. It's extremely specific.
Women-owned veterinary practices in the United States.
Yeah. And so when you're that specific, you can do some pretty interesting things. Like you can create a book with a title that is something like Advanced Tax Planning Strategies for Women-Owned Veterinary Clinics in the United States.
It's in process right now.
Nice. And guess what that does? That calls out exactly who you want. So when you put it in front of them to try and get them to raise a hand and show some interest in that, because not all female veterinarians that own their own clinic are going to be interested. Some of them don't care about that. Like, I'll send all my money to the government, but some of them are going to be like, wait a second, this Jamie girl, I need to know her because I want to keep more money.
Yeah.
And you're looking to see which group they're in, right? So you might send them a letter or put an ad in front of them or send them a postcard that offers this free book with that amazing title on it, right? And all of a sudden you've got all these leads coming in. So it allows you to do that. Whereas if you just sent a book out that was Advanced Tax Planning Strategies for Small Business,
it's so generic.
Yeah, it wouldn't mean anything to anybody. Yeah.
Well, and also I'm learning in the veterinary space as I learn more people or as I meet more people is they don't really like the word business. They run practices.
Practices, yes. Professionals run practices.
Yes. It's very interesting. So yeah, it's an amazing niche. And the more I learn about the industry and the more I talk to people and I talk to former veterinarians and current veterinarians and people who work with them, I'm just like, this is so perfect for us. So perfect. It's just all good people, all wanting to help veterinarians. And, there's a lot of things going on in the industry that really parallel to the accounting industry. So I'm sitting in these conferences like, like I understand it because I'm living it and I'm seeing it.
What a huge advantage. And you probably don't need 1,000 clients.
No, 150. We want 150.
Yeah. So you'll easily go find them. And that's the other thing that people don't do the math. They sit there and think I'm chasing clients. It's a never ending game. Most of the professional businesses that I work with, whether it's consultants or marketing agencies or accountants or whoever, they're looking for the right, dozen clients or 24 clients over the next year to add to what they have.
Yep.
And that'd be a great year, not for everybody, but for a lot of them. And that's an easier problem to solve. And that's a problem that really lends itself to getting very specific. And then the great thing is once you develop that magic book that you've got in process, right? And you get all of your lead generation strategies and all your follow-up strategies in place for that one really specific market, it's super easy to just hit the copy button and do it in a very closely aligned market right next door.
Right.
And usually most businesses can support doing 2 or 3, maybe 4 on the outside, different, specific target markets like that. And, now you've got a really great business and it's really easy to run and you're not trying to market to anybody and everybody. And you can probably go cold turkey on that next chamber mixer because it might not be very many female veterinary practice owners there.
I can tell you right now, there's 0 of them.
Yeah. Right. So you just freed up some time in your schedule to do something fun.
Which is why I just left, one of my networking groups because I was like, I love y'all. And this is 7 hours out of my month. Like I can't anymore. I have other things I need to be doing.
I went completely cold turkey on all of that kind of networking in 2012.
Yeah. It's, I love the relationships I've built by doing those groups. And I love, honestly, that's who I was pulling from for my first, people for the podcast. But I realized I forgot about them between meetings and they forgot about me between meetings. Right? Because we don't see each other otherwise. Right?
Right. And some of those were people that, when I was doing it, that I really enjoyed and I still have a relationship with those people, but we have a relationship that, where we have more fun.
Yes.
Don't show up at 7:00 in the morning for a early morning Friday breakfast meeting.
Oh man, those 7:00 meetings. I have somebody that keeps inviting me to like a 7:00 meeting and I'm like, I can't be there at 7:00. I start at 9 every day. I am in this chair at 9:00. So So you focus on service-based businesses. Why service-based?
I understand them. We made a decision that's who we wanted to be a hero
Mm-hmm.
to, and really we focus on people who get paid for their expertise. And that's kind of the world I came from in my first business. And I just understand the challenges of trying to sell that. It's not like you're selling, do you know what Krispy Kreme donuts are? Do they?
Yeah. We have them here in Colorado. Yeah.
So those are not hard to sell.
Mm.
You turn on the hot donut now sign and people show up, right? In fact, it's on an app. It's the most evil thing in the world.
There's an app? There's a I didn't know that.
Yeah, you get the app and it'll buzz you when your favorite Krispy Kreme has the hot donut now sign on, so you can go get donuts. And I'm embarrassed to say that I've actually responded to that trigger.
I would.
It's not hard to sell those, but if you're selling accounting or engineering or consulting, or you're a marketing agency and you're trying to get clients and they don't wake up in the morning going, gee, I really wish, my accountant had that hot donuts now sign on, you need a way to stay in touch. You need a way to communicate with them differently that focuses on the real problems that you solve, because, you do important work in your accounting practice. You save people tons of money if they'll listen to you.
If they'll listen to me.
Keep them out of jail.
Keep you compliant with all that too.
Yeah. And, and so communicating around those important problems that you solve can sometimes be a challenge to do. And so that's who we want to work with and who we want to be a hero to.
Yeah, it's a massive challenge. And I think the massive challenge is we just do tax returns. So it is product based. We are Krispy Kreme to a lot of people. They think they can just walk in and get tax returns done. So it's interesting because, and I talk about the accounting industry being parallels. There's lots of parallels, but the tax return stuff has been commodified. Thank God. Hopefully eventually we don't have to do anything with it, but it's hard to convince people you do more than that, and to pay for that, but also they want more. They just don't understand what it is they need or want beyond that tax return. So I spend a lot of time explaining how we're different, or explaining kind of like, what's an EA, what's a CPA, what do you need? What do you actually need here? But I always am like, this is what I think is the best path for you. And a lot of the time it's not us. I just did a discovery session with somebody. I was like, I can't in good conscience charge you what I charge. I can't charge you my minimum. You didn't even make my minimum this year. It's not a good fit for you, but here's what you need to do. And here's what, the next person you talk to, I'm going to write you a little summary of what you just told me. And this is what you need to get together.
Yeah, that's called being a professional.
Yeah. I mean, it's just about providing value, regardless if they're a good fit or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly why we've chosen to focus on this particular market. We love working with people like you who have that kind of approach to things. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, I think I told you in our first conversation a few weeks ago, my dad's a CPA.
Oh, that's right.
I grew up kind of in that small professional service world, small firm world. I know what it's like. I was the kid that was crawling around under the desk during tax season while dad was working on the weekends, So I get it. It's really hard to run a business where you're the CEO, you're the entire sales force, you're the one who comes in the morning and makes coffee. Sometimes you're the janitor. And oh, by the way, you're the product that we're selling too.
Right. It is hard.
Really hard.
It is really hard. I do have to say though, when I started my firm, I was like, no weekends. Right. So at one point my son was like, it's tax day. And he was pretty little, but he's like, are they gonna, or maybe it was my daughter, I can't remember, one of the two, they're like, they're going to decorate the library for tax day. And I was like, what? And they're like, they decorate the library for holidays. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. And then I think it was last year or the year before, we were driving somewhere and, the Liberty Tax people have the flipping sign person. And my son goes, it's tax season? And he looks at me and I go, win. That was a huge win for me, for them to not even know it was tax season.
That's fantastic.
Because I'd been available to them on the weekends.
There are very few accountants who can say that.
I still have a lot more money to make, and I still have a lot of people to help, but my priorities are right. Yeah.
That's great.
So I was like, yes, parenting win. Business owner win. I still have a ton of stuff to do, dude, but we'll get it figured out. So talk to us about your book. I flipped through it real fast, but you said you would offer it to everybody. So we're going to go ahead and put that in the link down below.
Yeah, it's just out. It's called Podcast Prospecting. And we've had so many questions about how we're using a podcast to really grow, the types of businesses that we've talked about. And I just sat down and I laid out the entire strategy there. So for somebody who's listened to this and is like, oh, that's interesting, I wonder how that would work. It really will take you through the whole thing. And there are a couple of things that we didn't get to today that are in there, including how to create from your podcast a book that will help sell your services, which is a very powerful strategy, which I'm glad you're doing.
Yes.
And so it really kind of wraps the whole thing together. The book is brand new. You actually can't even buy it yet, but we're going to give it to everybody who's listening today for free.
Awesome.
If they go to our website, go to unstoppableceo.net /abundant beans. They can go there, and on that page, they'll see a little picture of the book, and they'll be able to get a copy for free.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's bite-sized, guys. So I get lots of books that are like 300 or 400 pages, and I'm like, I can't. But I flipped through it real fast, and I was just kind of looking at it, and it looks really good, but it's also less than 100 pages.
Yeah. And it's
bonus.
Intentionally, it's like,
I'm sure that was intentional, but
I
just like to mention it.
We call them plane ride books.
Yes.
I love little books that I can, read on one leg of a flight. And,
if I can read it from here to Las Vegas, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's the perfect size. It's an hour and a half.
Yep.
Awesome.
That's exactly what you got there. So,
awesome.
So they can get that. Again, it's unstoppableceo.net /abundant beans.
Got it. We'll put it in the description boxes on all the platforms.
Awesome.
All right. So before I ask my last question, what is the easiest way for people to find you? The Unstoppable CEO.
Yeah, if they go to unstoppableceo.net, you can find us there. You can find out about what we do. You can listen to our podcast, get the book. And if you want to reach out and chat, you can reach me there.
Do that through there.
Box. Yep.
Perfection. And I'm assuming you have a newsletter.
We've got a newsletter every week. You'll hear about our podcast and some other special events that we're doing.
That's awesome. Okay. So my final question for you is, what is the one thing every small business owner can do today to start a better growth path for their business?
Well, we've already talked about it. The number one thing is get clear on who your ideal client is. I think that comes first. If you've done that, then the next best thing you can do is, if you have no other marketing in place, focus on referrals first. And
current client referrals,
current client and center of influence. We touch on that a little bit in this book. And then I've got a book that I wrote in 2014 called Unstoppable Referrals, which lays out a system for that. And that's usually where people should start.
I love it. Because I think that's what a lot of us are missing. I know I am. I'm missing that piece. Because I have a whole database. It has to be put together, but I have a whole database.
So here's the preview. Your book, when it's done, if you, and we should get together and we'll talk, maybe on our podcast, we'll brainstorm some of this.
Yeah. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. And that's the secret to unlocking massive numbers of referrals.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It was really good. And I'm so excited to do it again on yours.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jamie, this has been fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we'll talk soon. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.